What's up, everybody? Welcome to the video. So we're breaking down the Xfinity 500 at Martinsville Speedway, aka the paperclip. This will take place on Sunday, October 29th, around 2 or 3 p.m. Eastern. And I know short track racing has been very boring in this car. There's no passing, and basically it's just one on pit road, it seems like, or if you just have good track position to start with. But this race should at least be interesting from a points standpoint because we are on the cutoff race for the Final Four. You have Christopher Bell and you have Kyle Larson locked in. There's 2 more spots, and it's looking like right now William Byron will get that 3rd spot unless there's a catastrophe for him in this race, but he didn't qualify well, so I guess he's not trending in the right direction. Then you have Ryan Blaney, who put himself in a good position after Homestead. And then after that, I feel like we can probably cross off Chris Buescher. You have Tyler Reddick right there, but you have the 2 big dogs who are both excellent at Martinsville, and Martin Truex Jr. and Denny Hamlin. Truex put himself on the pole. Denny Hamlin's in the first 2 rows, so it should be very interesting on how this plays out. Me personally, I would love to see Ryan Blaney and Denny Hamlin both advance, but I realize the chances of both of them advancing is probably pretty low, so I'm in a bit of a pickle right now. And I do want to give a quick shout out to Homestead Miami Speedway. That was my first race last week, and it was absolutely incredible. Me and Juliana, my girlfriend, both went, and it was a heck of a time. We enjoyed it, and there was actually Wi-Fi at the track, which was incredible, so I could check Twitter, look at the NASCAR app, check my FanDuel lineups or whatever it was, check Discord. So heck of an experience. If you live near Miami or anywhere in South Florida, I'd highly recommend going next year. And while you're there, go check out the city of Miami. There's tons to do over there, and it's a beautiful looking city. So 10 out of 10 experience, and I would do it again. I already talked for way too long, so let's just skip the intro, but like, subscribe if you enjoy. Use the promo codes down below for a prize picks on Underdog, promo code CPEN. But let's move on to the strategy portion here at Martinsville. It's a paperclip, looks just like it. Extremely small track, half a mile and 500 laps. So draw one thing in your mind this week, and that would be Dominators, Dominators, and Dominators. Practice and qualifying just ended, so I don't know exactly what the order looks like, but be careful with place differential at a track like Martinsville. And the first next-gen race that we had at Martinsville last year is a prime example of why you shouldn't get caught up too much in place differential. And it's really one of my favorite races ever as far as my analysis because I feel like we just absolutely nailed it. So we had Chase Elliott, William Byron. They were starting up front, and those were your 2 main dominators, and that's who we were extremely overweight on. And you had Martin Truex Jr., Denny Hamlin. They were starting in the back of the field, and people weren't as smart yet to the next-gen car, or just really a NASCAR DFS in general. I think people have gotten a lot smarter over the past year now, especially with the Millie Maker. It's gotten more eyeballs on the sport for DFS purposes. But Truex and Hamlin were so highly owned, even though they had poor performance in practice, poor performance in qualifying. At a track like this, you're going to have so many cars go lap down if this stays green, which I think is very likely. And they just ended up sucking all day. And we get all the Dominator points from Chase Elliott, William Byron. Like the place differential points, yeah, they're fine. That gives you a decent floor. But I don't really want those kind of points at a track like this because if I can get a guy up front that leads 300 laps, that's going to way outweigh a guy that has some place differential points that can get me 20 spots, but they're not going to get me those Dominator points. So really focus on starting position here. Dominators, those are going to be your main factors in taking down tournaments. Yes, there's going to be an outlier or 2, guys that can gain spots throughout the race. But if you are allocating your funds anywhere this week up top, don't make it place differential plays. Make it guys that you think can lead a large chunk of laps this week. And finally, let's move on to the driver-by-driver breakdown. And I have to mention first, if you'd like anything you see on the screen behind me, it's all available completely free 4-week over my Patreon. Links down below in the description or the pinned comment for that. Projections on all sites, DraftKings FanDuel, my sim scores, my betting model, which has been pretty good this year, up over 30 units. And we only have 2 races left, so pretty much locked in for plus 30 units this season and maybe a little bit more. I'm not a big better week to week, which is fine because I try to limit my losses and still chip away at good wins throughout the season. My cheat sheet going over cash games, tournaments, my article, my Discord community, and I do cover other sports as well, including the NFL every single week and the NBA every single day since the season just started about a week ago. So if you're to come in, check it all out. Completely free for a week. If you like it, you can stay. If not, tell me to kick rocks. Won't hurt my feelings. But let's dive right into it here. And like I said, this is my first reactions to the entire slate. Just watch practice, just watch qualifying, and like I'm in for a bit of a surprise in some of these qualifying spots because I know the top 10, but after that, I always completely forget where everybody else is at. And I see Kyle Busch right there with the big red 31 there. So we'll definitely have some talking points this week. And I'll give my opinion on that. And if you're looking at the odds, these are not updated yet. This is pre-practice, pre-qualifying. If I had to guess, I would probably say Truex will end up being the favorite. He came in at plus 900. So if you bet Truex, congrats. You got some really good value there. Not saying he's a lock to win. But this is definitely going to be a race where I do think Hamlin and Truex will be the main threats to win here, and they both need to punch their ticket for the playoffs. So guys like Ryan Blaney and them are going to be sweating. And I want to mention one thing. If you were looking at practice this week, it is heavily skewed, and I really don't even feel like looking at the practice numbers, because if you were in Group 1, you are so much faster than everybody else. Group B is just lagging behind. If I could pull up my practice sheet here that I do have on my model here somewhere. So the guys highlighted in yellow, they were the ones that went out to the track first, and the track was much faster, so their times are overall much quicker. And as you can see, the guys with the yellow shading, all besides JJ Yeley, they're at the very top of the list. And if you're wondering why Denny Hamlin is orange, he was in Group 1, but he had a bolt loose, I guess, when he needed to shift, so he had to come in after 4 laps, and then he went out for like another few laps, and he came back in. So we didn't get a long run in practice from Denny Hamlin until the very end. So basically, he was in Group 2, as far as I'm concerned, for like the 10-lap run. The first lap, he was like the first guy out there, ended up putting down the best lap, and then we saw he was really fast in qualifying. So he's got a good car, but we just don't really have the early run, long run data, if that makes sense for Hamlin with Group 1 with everybody else, because he went out late. So I'm pretty much throwing him in Group 2, if that makes sense. So just keep in mind when you see like Corey LaJoie is the fastest car on the track, if you're looking at the overall numbers, that is probably why, because he was in Group 1. So I'm not really sure how useful practice is going to be, and I hate this staggered practice because it just makes everything more confusing. But let's start up top here with the man, Denny Hamlin, 11,500 on DraftKings, 14K on FanDuel. He's starting in 4th here, so he's in the first 2 rows. Opened up at like plus 250 some places, plus 275. Like, I think Denny probably wins this race. Well, at least I did before qualifying. I think Truex is right there with them. But betting him at plus 275 is absolutely insane. I had so much negative leverage there. There's just so much that can happen in a NASCAR race to bet someone at plus 275 before practice and qualifying. It's just absolutely insane. We already went over the practice numbers, and I'm not really sure how much we should trust these. But we know Denny Hamlin, really good at Martinsville. He says it's the best track. He hasn't won here in a while, but he's definitely been right up there in contention. He's got the second most Dominator points, only behind Chase Elliott. 110 laps led per race. Dominated this race last year. Didn't get the win. Christopher Bell got it, but I mean, it's always going to be Denny Hamlin contending in Martinsville almost every single time we are here, besides that first race in Martinsville last year. But yeah, Denny's got to be in the tournament pool as far as being a Dominator. If you can start your builds with Denny Hamlin and Martin Truex Jr. this week, I feel like that's going to be a very strong way to go. Because like I said, they both need to punch their ticket, and their cars look really good overall, especially from what we saw in qualifying. And they're both really good at Martinsville. So that's probably the way I would start my lineups this week, is with Hamlin and Truex. I know you're not getting a lot of PD, but like I said, we're looking for Dominator points, and they can offer you that. William Byron's a fine play. He was fast in practice. Keep in mind, though, he was in that first group, so I'm not really exactly sure how fast this car is, especially considering he qualified 16th when the field was a bit more even as far as track conditions are concerned. He did win here last year, put on a clinic, but I do prefer Hamlin and Truex here. I think they have more upside. Byron's in the player pool. You can't ignore him. He's also racing for a final playoff spot, but I think he just needs to keep his car clean, and he should be able to advance. Cat Larson starting in 5th. He's in the same category as guys like Hamlin and Truex. He'd probably be my 3rd option as far as being a Dominator in this race. I would have Truex number 1, Hamlin number 2, and Larson number 3. I've not yet run projections or anything like that or my Dominator tool, but it's probably how it's going to end up shaking out. Martin Truex Jr. on the pole. He was on the pole last week. Obviously, you weren't too happy with the output. Ended up blowing an engine near the end of the race, but still didn't really dominate like you would have expected. But on the pole to short track's a bit of a different situation. He should have controlled this race and lead the majority of stage 1. If that's going to be the case, that's a lot of Dominator points. You know, good Truex is at Martinsville. I would load up on him. Going to be one of my highest owned drivers on either DraftKings or FanDuel this week. On FanDuel, much cheaper than Denny Hamlin. They're both going to project well, and if that's going to be the case, well, Truex is a lot cheaper, so I'll just have a ton of him. But both are 100% play, obviously. Ryan Blaney, $10,400. He's starting at 11th. Great race last week at Homestead. Put himself in a good situation as far as his points. And he was pretty strong in practice. And keep in mind, he was in that second group. So for being in the second group, these numbers do look very strong to me. He has a series best average finish here at Martinsville in the next gen car. And he's just really good at Martinsville in general. I don't know the exact statistics, but at least in the past 6 races for Ryan Blaney at this track, 3 top 5s in the top 15 every single time. I believe there was a stat where his top 10 numbers were just incredible. But yeah, I love Ryan Blaney. And the thing is, though, it's going to be kind of tough to fit him alongside Truex and Hamlin. So I would say in the builds that you don't have both of them, Ryan Blaney is probably the guy that's going to start to filter in as the second Dominator there. I just wish he qualified a little bit better because when you're not inside the top 10, it is a bit tough to dominate here. Christopher Bell, $10,100. He's starting in 7th. We know he's great at short flat tracks. I'm fine with some Bell. Like, all these guys are viable, but I mean, I just really have such a fascination on Hamlin and Truex this week. That's where the majority of my ownership will go. But he kind of just filters in with like the Blaney Larson group, and I guess a little bit of Byron, where they're fine secondary pieces, but not guys I'm going to build around. Dropping out of the 9K range, Joey Logano, very similar to Ryan Blaney, where he's just really, really good here at Martinsville. Wasn't overly impressive in practice. I believe he was in that second group. I should probably double check that. Yeah, Joey Logano in the second group. And if you're looking at the second group, like overall practice times, the fastest car is Ryan Blaney, Denny Hamlin, because I'm going to throw him in there, Joey Logano, Christopher Bell, Harrison Burton, Eric Almirola, Kyle Larson. So while the practice times aren't as good on paper as guys like William Byron, Kyle Busch, I think overall they do have the better cars, and that would show in qualifying because they did not qualify them. So, and hopefully that leads to lower ownership as well. So if you're a tournament player and you pay attention to stuff like this could definitely work in your favor. So I'm fine with Joey, especially on FanDuel at $9,000. I think he'll end up being one of my more favorite plays on the blue site this weekend. Brad Keselowski is a little bit expensive this week, but I get it because of how good he is here at Martinsville and just short tracks in general. I prefer Joey Logano if I had to pick between the two, but he's fine. Tyler Reddick's probably going to end up being a pass for me. I realize he was super fast in practice, but he wasn't that first group. He's just not the best short track racer. Looking at his Martinsville numbers, average finish 21st, running position of 19th, has 1 top 10, 1 top 15, no Dominator points. Like, I don't think he's going to absolutely be awful because this is a playoff cutoff race, and obviously he needs to do well. But he spun in he spun in qualifying on his second lap, and I just prefer the likes of Logano and Keselowski more because I trust them way more at a track like Martinsville because it's a very unique track, and the guys that are good here just tend to be good here the majority of the time. Kyle Busch starting in 31st, fast in practice, off a qualifying lap. I'm hoping he's going to be high owned because I'm probably going to be fading him here. But looking at Kyle Busch's numbers at Martinsville, I mean, they're not awful. Average finish of 13th, running position of 15.7, 4 top 10s and 1 top 5. If you're looking at the short flat track numbers in the next gen car for Kyle Busch, average finish of 12th, running position of 15th, and some overall decent numbers. But at a track like Martinsville, if you're going to qualify this poorly, I would rather get my funds the guys starting closer to the front, the guys that have potential to get the fast laps or at least get up front at some point. And if I'm going to be going hard on guys like Hamlin and Truex and then filtering in the guys priced around them and try to get some Joey Logano in there, I'm not sure how I'm going to be able to get too much Kyle Busch in. If he goes a lap down early, he'll be sitting very good in tournaments, especially if the ownership does end up being high. So he's a really good underweight candidate as of right now. Chase Elliott, $8,800. He's starting in 14th. He is pretty darn good at Martinsville. Super slow in practice. He was in that second group, keep in mind. So I guess we can give him a bit of a pass there since we're giving everyone else a pass. But still, he wasn't that fast either way. And it's just kind of tough to trust the 9 team as of right now. Great numbers in Martinsville, but I don't think I'm going to have too much Chase Elliott. Chris Buescher, he's been just really sucking it up in this round of the playoffs. He's starting in 18th. Awful race last week. Top 10-ish car. Looking at practice, 13th in the 5, 9th in the 10, and 11th in the 15. I believe he was also in that first group, though, which doesn't make me feel great because he was still slower than a guy like Ryan Blaney that was in the second group and still behind a lot of these drivers. So I don't really think I'm going to have too much interest in Chris Buescher. Kevin Harvick, this is his last race in Martinsville. We know he's good at short flat tracks. I usually don't care how Kevin Harvick practices because the number 4 team just finds a way in the top 10 almost every single week. So I'm fine with Kevin Harvick at this price point. It's actually a really nice price on DraftKings at a short flat track for Kevin Harvick, so I'm fine with that. Ty Gibbs, he's starting in 2nd. I think he's a pretty solid tournament play. Some of the Toyotas look so fast this week, and obviously qualifying in the front row, he's got a pretty darn good car. Top 10 across the board in practice. If he can hang within the top 6 and pick up fast laps here and there, there's always a chance he gets up front, but I'm not sure how hard he's going to battle his teammate Martin Truex Jr. or Denny Hamlin since they're fighting for a playoff spot. Might get some team orders there, but on FanDuel, he's below 7K. If you can get a guy that finishes like 4th or 5th for $6,000 on FanDuel, you'll take that all day. Ross Chastain, he's really cheap on both sides. He's starting in 13th. He had that one really good spring race, and then obviously the Hail Melon in the fall race last year to get Denny Hamlin at the end. Wasn't overly impressive in practice. I believe he was in that second group, though, which, yes, he was. He was right behind Kyle Larson as far as their averages are concerned. So not going to kick him to the curb completely. Like, he's fine for the price tag, but I'm not going to go to way to get him. But if he just ends up populating lineups, I'm not going to kick him out forcefully. Then in the 7K range, you basically have all the Stewart-Haas lawnmowers. Although this week they don't look like it. Almirola's in 12th, Briscoe's in 3rd, Ryan Preece in 9th. With how good they were at Martinsville earlier in the season, we saw Ryan Preece lead some laps, we saw Chase Briscoe lead some laps. I forget what Eric Almirola did, but we know he's good at the short flat tracks in general, has 4 top 10s here the past 6 races, and this is his last Martinsville race. He announced he's retiring. Smithfield's going to be gone, so maybe we get a nice little farewell tour here. So I'm fine with all these guys in tournaments, but I mean, not to have an overabundance, but if you want to be slightly overweight, I'm okay with that. Alex Bowman feels a bit trappy starting in the 20s there. I know he's in a Hendrick car. He's cheap, but was not good in practice whatsoever. I feel like there's just better options, and I mean, I don't really see him getting above the top 15 personally. But Wallace in 6, he's got track position. I would throw him in the same player pool as guys like Almirola, Briscoe, and Preece. Like, you're not going your way to play them, but if it's like your last piece fit and you already have a chalky looking lineup, these are not bad fill-ins. Even though they weren't that great in practice, I believe the majority were in the second group, if I remember correctly. So we have Briscoe in the second group, Ryan Preece in the second group, as well as Eric Almirola, who is right here. So that does bode well for them because they did qualify well, practice poorly, so I think they should have some pretty strong cars. Going to the 6K range, bunch of bums here, unfortunately, but we're going to have to filter in our lineups just because we can't play everybody above 7K, unfortunately, and fit in multiple Dominators. And you're looking at least 3 this week. Now, if you want to go the 2 Dom route and you just think it's going to be Truex Hamlin, they lead half the race apiece, you can get away with that, but I would still try to find a guy that you think can pick up fast laps, like a Ty Gibbs and there, or Kevin Harvick. I think that would make some sense. But we had Daniel Suarez starting in 27th, very fast in practice, was in Group 1 though, so it looks like he's going to have a slower car overall. I think he just ends up getting lapped. Same with Eric Jones, just really slow, starting in nearly 30th place. Just don't see a ton of upside. AJ Allmendinger, I kind of like at tracks like this. We didn't get too much in practice out of him. Was in that second group, 31st in the 1 lap, 32nd in the 5 lap, so we'll cut him some slack there. I don't think Allmendinger is the worst play in the world if you're looking at his Martinsville numbers. I know it hasn't been a great history past 3 races here. Average running position at 24th, average finish of 25th. If you're looking at short flat track numbers in general, the next gen car, it's a little bit better, around 20th and 22nd, starting in 25th. I don't hate it. You get a little bit better track position compared to guys like Suarez and Jones, but I'm not like happy about playing Allmendinger, but we got to look for some plays down here. Austin Dillon might not be awful. The problem is practice was terrible, but his numbers in Martinsville aren't too bad. 16th for the average running position. Same with the average finish. Drive rating of 76 as a top 5, 4 top 15s. Guess Austin Dillon is viable, but man, there is like, just looking at this, there is no good place down here. I know Corey LaJoie is going to be popular. Looking at the 5K range really quick because he's starting on 30th and green across the board here. Second, first, third. First group, numbers are way skewed, but he has 0 DNFs this year. I just looked at that stat. So he's been at least consistent staying on the track. So I guess if I had to pick one of these 5K guys, Corey LaJoie is not terrible. Harrison Burton, the Penske cars look pretty strong. I am fine with Burton. He was in that second group, and he had actually one of the faster cars for being in that second group. Top 20 across the board in practice. So I think Burton's a solid play. If LaJoie's going to have a ton of ownership, Burton might be an excellent pivot down there. Haley, slow, but they get better in the long run in practice, at least 20th in the 15, 14th in the 20. Cindric I'm fine with as well. So honestly, the 6K range looks terrible to me. Like, you have a couple of guys that look decent. Maybe Hocevar starting in 32nd. But really, Cindric at 57, LaJoie at 54, and Burton at 55 really don't look like that bad of plays. Even Todd Gillen, they're top 12 in practice across the board with decent track position. And Justin Haley in 24th. This actually sets us up well because it looks like we do have some decent 5K plays, and that's going to allow us to fit in multiple Dominators in our builds this week. So sorry if I kind of jumped around a little bit, but there's just no use of me saying, well, we have Austin Dillon. He's slow in practice. He's maybe in play. Carson Hocevar, he starts in the back, slow in practice. Maybe he's in play. So guys, listen up to me. Some of these 5K guys, and that's going to fit well with roster construction this week, I think. And also for the fans, BJ McLeod never. With that being said, that's all I got for you guys this week. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure you leave a like down below. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet done so. Wish you all the best of luck. Unfortunately, only one more video for the season, but we're back in full force in February with live streams as well. So I'm really looking forward to that. I wish you all the best of luck once again, and I'll see you all next time.